Welcome back to Throuple Talk Podcast. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Kristen and Ayala, the brilliant minds behind the Non-Monogamy Card Game. They are both professional psychotherapists and have brought their clinical expertise and personal passion to build this fabulous game. And thank you both so much for joining us today.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
We're so excited to be here.
So do you want to talk to us more about how you came up with the idea of this beautiful game? It's a very beautiful game, by the way. I was impressed on what a good quality it is. I have never seen anything like that. And I think that was one of the main, right? I don't know if one of the main, but I know you focused on looks, right?
Thank you. Yeah, we put a lot of love into that and worked with an amazing graphic designer to co-create all the imagery on that. We really wanted a beautiful product that you were proud to kind of bring out and show. So thanks for noticing.
Yeah, and a shout out to our graphic designer and branding specialist, Jenna Blank, Blank. She's out of Death Valley. She's amazing.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, we played it a couple times and we were like, it was surprising how even as long as we've been at Throuple, some of these stuff was like, even if we dealt with it before, it was like, it was time to revisit again.
Yes.
You know, things change over the years. So yeah, it was very good.
Yes. I definitely saw the value.
That's some of
the value of having this if you're monogamous in your thinking to dip your toes in non-monogamy.
Yeah, if we had had this in the very beginning, it would have saved us a lot of suffering.
And even if your answers change later, like it starts these conversations. So then you're like, okay, I know we talked about this before and this was my answer then, but this now that this has happened, I'm feeling this way. So yeah, it's a great way to just make these conversations not so taboo and not so hard to address.
That's just also great to hear because those are things we really kept in mind. When we first created the game, Kristen and I were both having people come into our practice that were relatively new to non-monogamy and just like, where do we start? What questions do we ask? Everyone says we need agreements. What should we have agreements about?
Right.
So when the mindset we were first designing the game from was more, okay, we've been in this monogamous relationship and what do we want to be considering? But then the more we sent it out to our communities to test, some of my favorite feedback was long-term polycules coming back and saying exactly what you just said. So there's conversations this is bringing up that we didn't even know we weren't having. And we were surprised there was anything that was still there or the way these conversations evolve over time. So it's really cool to hear.
Yeah, I was telling Josh and Liv as we were looking through it again in prep for this episode, I was telling them like, I think it would be a good practice to do like even like every 6 months or every year in our relationship, just because things do change. Like maybe something that was totally irrelevant 6 months ago, it's very relevant now, with a career change or whatever life happens. So, yeah.
And as we all grow and everything, our answers change to some of these questions. Things that didn't bother us at the beginning, might bother us now or vice versa. So that's right. I'd say one of my ongoing frustrations that I've had since we started this podcast is we get emails almost daily from people that always want the fast answer to things. And we're like, we've answered that like 15 times on all these different podcasts. Go and watch the podcast for that. No, I don't want to watch that. Just give it to me right now. I need to know this thing. So I feel like this game is a way to get those answers very quickly. It's like, why don't you just dive into this? You'll get to the meat and potatoes very fast with this game.
Yeah. And the bottom line is we can tell you what our answer has been, but that's not going to be the same for you. Everybody has their own answer. Every relationship has its own answers. So yeah, us telling you.
Oh, this is fantastic feedback.
Only so good.
And I think it's also really helpful to those people that are just maybe thinking about it, or a lot of people that Ayala and I encounter is post-crash, we got really excited. We had some great conversations. We were a big yes, and we like threw ourselves out there. And then kaboom.
I love that you brought that up because we find that a lot too.
Yeah.
People that like couples that have tried to form a throuple and then like you're saying, post crash, something happened and then they go back to zero and try to figure out how to do it right.
Correct. Yeah. It's like in the beginning, it's all new, NRE and everything's great. And we've got this all figured out. And how could this go wrong? And then it crashed. Yeah. It was like, well, you guys didn't do the work. Yeah. You didn't ask the hard questions. You didn't build the foundation. So I feel like this game is a definite jumpstart to get there.
We love this idea of living conversations because I think when you're talking about the quick answers, people are like, let's make our agreements and then go for it. And there is no roadmap here. We do change and evolve, and our relationships change and evolve. And these need to be conversations we revisit as we learn more, as we learn ourselves better for each new situation.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you definitely created the game with the idea that it's not something that you play only once and you just forget about it.
Yeah. And I feel like it covers a lot of things you would read in a book. But the problem with the book is I could read the book,
It's a
but
book.
maybe she's not going to read the book or whatever. But this is like everything that would be in the book. And we all are taking part at all at the exact same time in real time. So it's a genius idea.
Thank you. We wanted to sort of jump on the zeitgeist of relationship card games, and we found that there really wasn't anything that was specifically created for non-monogamous exploration across the spectrum of whatever that might be, from just having some personal time thinking about it on your own, all the way to practicing maybe something like a kitchen table polyamory. We had one tester family that had been together for almost 20 years and had 3 grown kids. And, so I love that a lot more experienced people have also found it valuable, as well as people who are just sort of wondering and curious. And that's why we created the 2 decks. And we have had so much fun hearing all the feedback and the ways that people use it, whether they're bringing it just to a social activity where it's not even necessarily a non-monogamy activity or polyamory activity, just as something social and fun. We've had different pods that pull cards, put them on their Discord channel, do a little offline work and connecting, working through issues, because time together, they told us, is so precious. We don't want to spend a lot of time necessarily processing stuff. We have couples that use them at relationship check-ins. Ayala and I are big on relationship check-ins. And so, pulling a card and having that be the topic for that check-in has been something that people are also using. And then we are also really marketing our game to relationship therapists and coaches and people in the blogosphere and influencers like yourself, because like you said, so many people are coming at you with questions and they want the answers and they want to do it right. And it can be so easy to think like there is one right way, but Ayala and I really wanted to have a lot of nuanced on-ramps. We wanted to have lots of ways people could access the conversation that felt inviting and not like you had to have all of this experience, or as we say, like be one of the cool kids, because there is no place where all the cool kids are hanging out and it's all flowing necessarily. We're all just people trying to find our way. So
well said.
If one of you ladies wants to walk us through the structure of the game, I can show it, the 2 decks and what's the idea behind.
Yeah. So originally we created just 1 deck, and really quick we got feedback that it was a big jump to go from what's exciting to you about beginning to explore non-monogamy all the way to how do we talk about finances with multiple partners in the equation? And so we decided to pull them apart after getting that feedback. And so there's the foundation stack that is a lot more values questions. It's a lot more self-exploration, reflection, and the ways you share that with your partners and the ways you get to learn about each other through that. And there's just fun connective questions. We've gotten the feedback that a lot of people who are not sure if they want to even explore non-monogamy still get a lot out of answering these kind of questions with partners. And there's stuff that's very specific to non-monogamy in there, but we tried to keep anything that might feel jarring and it like kind of heavier. You want to have a little more experience with this and save that for the deep dive and then there are important questions. And we found the deep dive questions feel a lot safer if you've already worked through the foundations. There's already that shared understanding. And then you can get into detailed questions. And it's funny because in non-monogamy, as we know, like there's no roadmap. You might be a closed throuple, you might be a relationship anarchist, and you might be kind of still operating from a monogamous framework and just beginning to open. And so there's a big umbrella. And so, of course, there's going to be questions in both decks that might not apply to you. But even that, in defining and pulling a question, being like, oh, I'm not sure how this fits, or what you imagine about it, we've still found a useful practice. So that kind of sets the 2 decks. I don't know if you want to speak more to how it's used and played, Kristen.
Yeah, so we want it to be really flexible. It's obviously 150 relationship prompts is not something you're going to sit down and you're going to go through in one sitting. It's really, it's really, the rules of the game are there are no rules. But if you want to have some sort of direction, we also have we have a little tiny vocabulary that's in there. And again, we put a disclaimer: the vocabulary is changing all the time. We didn't want to get hung up on semantics, but just there is a little bit of the beginner vocabulary. And then we have some instructions for a deeper, more advanced play. And it basically goes in 4 different rounds, and it helps you. You can do sort of like a lightning, sort of off the top of your head, and then you can kind of spiral down into more sort of different perspectives on that particular question. So we do offer guidance if people want it. But then again, mostly people are telling us that they're pulling a card or 2 and sort of working on that within themselves, journaling or talking with a partner or partners about that particular topic.
Nice. Yeah, the vocabulary terms was very useful because being in the space as long as we have, I felt like we knew every term. But even we got an argument about what the difference was between a metamour and a paramour. I felt like we were like reading Monopoly rules. No, this is how we always play it.
No, I think we were talking about the paramour and the friend with benefits. What is the difference?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
That's what it was. Yeah, everybody has their own definition.
It's like so much in the space. Changing so much all the time, and different people might define it different. In my community, it might be defined one way, and in someone else's community somewhere else, it might be defined differently. Mm-hmm. It's like we are making up our own rules and seeing what works for us, and we're really encouraging of that.
I would highly suggest couples looking into getting into a throuple that they definitely get this game and do the foundations. Like that was the bread and butter right there. Mm-hmm. When we got it later into the deep dive about a lot of those cards, we had to try to figure out how to tweak them. The questions so they would work for us, because most throuples that we talk to or whatever, they're kind of a closed, triad. They're almost more monogamous than polyamory at this point. So we were like, well, how do we tweak this to work for us? And we figured out ways to do it. So you have to get a little creative, but it was still, it's really good.
Yeah. So yeah, very relevant to the throuple relationship.
I don't think you've answered this. We haven't asked you, like, how did you come up with all the prompts? Was it something that you encountered during your experience with clients, or like personal, or because they're very well thought of?
All of the above. Ayla and I, it started with Ayla texting me like in the middle of a work day going, I just had this couple in here and they were asking me, okay, so we've read Polysecure. Now what? They don't want to do the workbook, or like, now what? Either people don't read or they read the book, but then they felt overwhelmed with how to actually apply stuff. Workbooks are great if you're my generation or older, but a lot of people just don't want to do a workbook. So we started creating a document. We co-created a Google Doc. We just started adding questions to it. And then it just kind of evolved from there. And then Ayla was just like, what would it be like if we went ahead and made the tool that we actually wanted? We thought that would be sort of a fun adventure.
It just felt so boring to give people a list of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're like, how can we make this less drab? These conversations should be fun. You're getting to know each other in deeper ways.
And these are fun. I mean, games are fun.
A lot of knowing what questions to ask does come from personal experience, from being parts of non-monogamous community, and also from our work with our clients. But I'd say a lot of the questions is life.
I appreciated that there was multiple of financial and jealousy, because I think those are two hot topic ones that come up in our private face group.
And children too. There were questions about children too.
It was like one card would not have been enough. We need to rephrase.
And several different
times.
Ones about like, how public are you? Like, all right, how public are you at work, with family, with friends, with school? Like, and all of these are separate cards, because I think if you just have one card, maybe you're not thinking about all these different aspects of where. And
I love that you noticed that.
Yeah. And some people are like, oh, I want to be completely open, but like, what if somebody has a job that, So it just brings up these important conversations that are hard to just bring up without hurting feelings.
That's actually one of the cards. So we picked 3 cards from each deck, and it's one of the deep dive cards, and is asking, is marriage or a public commitment important to you? Why or why not? And I feel like that is a very good question when you think about not just Throuples, but any kind of polyamorous relationship. Like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
And should I go through them? Like,
Sure.
okay.
Let's do it.
So I picked three. We picked three. It wasn't just me. Actually, no, this I did myself. The other three, we picked all of us from the Foundations deck. And one of them is, in what ways do you foresee non-monogamy being challenging? I thought that was a good question. And do we want to answer?
It's a very open question.
It's a very open question. And it kind of makes you like the first thing that comes to
Brings
mind.
out all the fears. Yeah.
Yeah. And one is, what happens if your partners decide that non-monogamy is not actually what they want? And I picked this one.
We've dealt with that one
because
before.
we had an episode where we talked about that when you came out as poly, Josh, to
Yeah.
Shar, and you said you were ready to just be monogamous if she would not have been okay with it. So I
Correct.
feel like
No, I thought that was a good question.
that's
yeah.
a good question. And what are your thoughts on having relationship rules versus agreements?
We put that one in there because we have met so many people that, as a value inherently, and it seemed very wedded to their relationship framework of non-monogamy, was to have no rules.
Mm-hmm.
It felt that to have a sense of anarchy, and that was really important. And the way we learned to respond to that is basically like, it's, even if you say, I don't want to have an agreement around this, it's still an important conversation. Let's talk about why you don't want to have an agreement about this, why you don't want to be transparent, why this feels like you want to have this thing a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, if we talk about the very foundation of why we created this game, yeah, great, let's make a tool for other people. But if you take it into a larger value between Ayala and I, is that I think this is a particular moment in time where individualism is working against us, and it sort of has gone so far now that the world feels so fractured. So we really wanted to help people go from the me to the we. How do I maintain my sovereignty, my identity, live my best life, become sexually self-actualized, feel free in my expression of who I am, and also do it within an interrelational, interpersonal, within the community? Like, how do I create these connections? Even if I'm a relationship anarchist and I want everything to be whatever it wants to be, there's still emotional intelligence, there's still empathy, there's still understanding and connection. And we really want people to feel like permissed to have conversations and learn about these things in a way that doesn't feel invasive. And one of the feedbacks that we've loved is that people will say, well, I pick the card. Like, the game says we should probably just have a conversation about that.
Gives them the freedom. Wasn't me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The card says.
Yeah. No, even just like you were saying, Kristen, just the conversation of where I don't want any rules because of this and this reason. And something should be discussed.
Yes. Do you feel like in your practice, have you seen where people start off with the anarchy or no, I want no rules, but over time things come up, triggers, everything.
That's
all of a sudden,
question. What's
slowly
that? Yeah.
rules start to get put into place, or agreements?
I think it goes both ways. I think you can start with no rules, no agreements, and then you come across things. And it can also go the other way, where you start with a lot of rules and then you realize, oh, I have this agreement that if I meet someone new I'm excited about, I'm going to tell my partner before I even ask them out on a date. But then you're in a situation and that doesn't feel true in the moment, and then you're chafing up against the rule. And so I feel like this question, like, we put rules versus agreements, and I'm like, I had a little bias going in there that since I am so about these living agreements, that it's not static, and rules in my mind are a more static thing. And so so people come into my practice from both sides, and it's like, how do you get to this place of flexibility where you understand your own values, you understand anyone you're in relationships with values, and there's room to constantly be in conversation as you learn new things.
Nice. I think that's been our experience too, because we talk about that often. Just what we always say, never say never.
Never say never. Yeah.
Because it's floating. It's like you can try to put something out there, but they'd come up and later on we're like, actually, I changed my mind about this.
I'm actually going to use it now to get stuff I want. I'll say never. So that I have a question, Ayala. Do you have, and I'm going to ask the same question of you, Kristen, later. Do you have a favorite prompt, a favorite card?
I don't know. I feel like
something
it's been
that
different.
by favorite, I mean something
I
that
could
you
no
really
sooner pick a favorite
something that
star
you
from the heavens
really,
than a card from the sky.
that you appreciate the value that it brings. If it would be like one question that you would ask, let's say like that's the only chance you have, like is there any card in there that you think?
I think mine would be what makes you great partner material.
Okay. And why is that?
Because
I saw that card. We picked that one out. I said, do not play that card on the show. What if they turn it on us to make us answer that? That would be the hardest one to answer.
That was one of my favorites as well. I think I should set it aside. And then
nice
like,
hair, good teeth, strong back.
Yeah, because I mean, because I think oftentimes people, whether it's monogamy or not monogamy or whatever, like we can be motivated by our own desires. Like, I want more of something in my life. And so I think that one really makes people stop and think about like, what makes you great material? Like, why would I want to be with you? Even if it is just, if we're swinging, even if you're just a rocket in my life, I don't really care. It doesn't, it's still, what is it? And it also is very much tied to when people answer that question, I think I get a hit of what people appreciate in themselves. Mm-hmm. Are you kind to yourself? Do you appreciate and value yourself? Mm-hmm. If someone can't answer that question, I find that really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Or even how they answer it. What if they say, well, I'm the best thing you've ever had, honey? Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay.
And I found sometimes when I've gone out on a date with someone that's brand new to polyamory and they've been in like a committed monogamous relationship that they're just opening, it comes with a lot of this mentality of like what I want to get, the experiences I want to have. Mm-hmm. And what I love is that this question shifts back to like, and what am I bringing to the connection? Not in a transactional way, but it's just a nice flip in the way you're thinking about it.
That's very deep.
I think part of the reason I'm having a hard time.
You're right, because I've seen it a lot when the transition from monogamy to non-monogamy. Sometimes it starts out of this desperation of like I'm missing on something. What can I get to make my life better? So you tend to forget that there's another person there with you.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my favorite cards from the deck was I don't know, I might butcher the wording, but
you're going to steal my thunder. I think you're thinking the same card I was thinking of. I can feel it.
I think I found it initially and brought the conversation up. What do you need to do
that's the one.
to have the relationship that you really want? And I think it struck a chord with me because I approached relationships differently very much. It's like, what do I need to bring to the relationship to make you happy so that you love me? And then like over the last year, there's been a lot, that's been a big growth edge for me of like, what do I want? And then what is my responsibility in creating that? And that question is like, I read that, I was like, wow.
I was stuck on that card for like 10 minutes. I was like, no, you mean this card's written wrong. It's like, what do they need to do? Not me.
What external thing would make the relationship perfect for all of us?
You would just fix all your faults, then I could be happy. Right? No, that was
we're joking about it, but it's really a not profound shift in the way you approach relationship, and I think that question definitely comes from being a relationship therapist and having couples come in. And Ayala and I, like pretty early on, we're like, okay, we're not here to get that person to change so that you can be happier. And so I have this exercise in my practice where I ask people, what are the top 3 ways you want to feel in this relationship, and even give it like a percentage value out of 100%. And the way I have that exercise, so the people are like, yeah, I want to feel cherished, and I want to feel respected, I want to be sexually fulfilled. And then they list the percentages, and then it U-turns. It's like, I'm like, okay, so what are you doing in order to make that happen? And it's this idea of like, if you want more love in your life, be more loving. If you want more affection, if you want more depth, then bring it. Don't just sit there and wait for people to bring it to you. This is like a very proactive and exciting adventure and journey. And there's a lot of values in non-monogamy that I think are valuable just to society in general, to think about. What am I bringing to the table? How do I be more fulfilled by being fulfilling myself?
Well, you say not proud, but that it is proud, because it's like, it's a total mind shift, because we're just stuck always on, if everybody else would just do this, I could be happy. And to have to look back into yourself and say, what am I doing? What am I bringing to the table? That's a hard exercise to do.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, we all have a trouble. Yeah, we know what we're supposed to do, but it doesn't make it easy any easier.
It would be better if you would do
If you guys would just be as enlightened as me, then the world would be a better place, and we wouldn't have any problems.
Ayla, did you tell us?
And I love that you honed in on this card. Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I love that you honed in on this card, because we really tried to do that with the questions in the game. It's like, yes, it's about the answers to the questions, but also through engaging in the conversations, you're getting to deepen your own relationship skills, like that shift on how can I shift myself and what can I take accountability for.
Did you tell us what your favorite card was?
You couldn't pick one.
And part of the reason I think we have a hard time is because I'll have a conversation with one person as we're playing, and a card will come up, and I'll love getting into that conversation with them. And then with someone else, that same question doesn't dig up as much. And so it feels like every different dynamic I'm playing it in, different questions feel like the juicy questions.
Yeah, probably changes with the crowd.
One thing
No, it was an impossible question, but
I know I'm biased. I love so many of them when we created them.
We'll just say her favorite card was the pornography one.
I meant to put you ladies on the spot. So yeah, the pornography one.
We laughed when we saw that.
Oh, the sharing of the sheets. I like that one.
Oh, the sheets. Yes.
Yeah, there are.
We want to get some hot button ones in there.
Spicy.
Yeah, we like the spicy.
Shall I go through the other 3 that we have picked?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Go
Well, are we done? Okay, so we got 3 from the deep dive. This is the more for people that are experienced with polyamory. And this one is a good one. How do you protect each person's privacy? So we have discussed many times, like, what is private between dyads and what is not, especially when you're in a throuple.
I thought it was a generic question, to be honest, at first, but we ended up talking like for 15 minutes about it. So apparently it struck a nerve.
It's very nuanced, and it's something too that through our relationship, it has changed significantly. Like in the beginning, it's like you have more expectation of privacy, I think, that's unspoken, and then as it progresses, it's like,
and I have found that
I not realize that those boundaries are changing.
Many times I had less boundaries, and I just, like, if you and I, Josh, have a problem, I'm okay to have it to just we can fight, right in front of Shar. I have no problem with it. And you're like,
you have no problem with it.
And you're
like, Romanian. You're like, we do.
And I'm like, no, it's not. She's in the house with us. So yeah, I feel like I have less need of privacy than you guys do, at least at the beginning.
Yeah. I think it kind of settled for us where, like, as a throuple, we're mostly together and everything's out in the open. But sometimes there's personal things that are just between a dyad, and we're like, we're kind of realizing, like, we all had a different idea of what's private and what gets shared with the other dyad.
But to be honest, in the end, we all find out about it anyway.
Yeah, it all comes out. Once it's cooled off.
I imagine so often with closed throuples, this is something that shifts and grows over time as this particular throuple gets closer. Like in the beginning, a lot might feel more private, but then as that intimacy deepens, like in any dynamic, as the intimacy deepens, that shifts a lot.
Yeah, actually, in the beginning, that was a huge change for me, because it was so weird not to have that one-on-one privacy, and I didn't know how to deal with that. It was so vulnerable. It was so, like, it was quite the opposite. I was like, well, I'm gonna fight with you, and I'm gonna show Shar how horrible I am when I fight. She's gonna see it.
Yeah, I was happy to have somebody.
And then she's not gonna pick a fight.
That's outside of it.
I was fine to have a referee. I'm like, somebody to protect me.
Oh God. I have you on camera.
Kristen likes that one.
I have you on camera saying that you do not fight fair.
Oh, yeah, I said it. I admitted it to that therapist.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, I fight to win.
Yeah.
He agreed with me.
Petty much?
This is definitely
start
one
with
that in my own relationships didn't come out up as much, but then came up in my practice a lot. And I realized because personally, I'm like, once you're in my close inner, I don't have a lot of private. Like, I'm pretty transparent. You can talk to this other person about me because I'm transparent with who I am with both of you. But I really had to adjust my own understanding the more I became a relationship therapist and got this insider view on other people's relationships around how we're all so different about this. And I dated someone at one point that when his coworker asked him, how was your weekend? He felt intruded upon. Like, why are they asking about my private life? And I was just like, oh, okay, there's a broad spectrum on what we consider private information.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely, I think that is an important thing to discuss.
Yes.
Okay, should I move on?
Sure.
Next one. I actually already talked about this. Is marriage or a public commitment important to you? Why or why not? I feel like this is super important for Throuples because that additional partner will definitely have that question. Like, are we ever going to be married, all of us, or not? Or like, what are we looking for from this type?
Yeah,
of
that comes up in
relationship?
our
for us
all
specifically.
the time because it's not legal. So
it's not. So that's definitely a conversation, a hard one to have because there's so much stuff. And even if you want to get married, like there's so many impediments and like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing thing too for Throuples. We always talk about, some people have hierarchy, which you talked a lot about in the game, which is very nice. And then some people don't. We're like, we're not going to have any hierarchy. But as you learn as you go, it's unavoidable to not have any hierarchy at all because
it's unnatural to not have any.
Because you have some long-standing marriage or whatever. We're like, well, we've already been paying bills and doing it this way, or we're on this, insurance or whatever. It's and nothing's set up that you can have three people, or not many things. So it's difficult. It's impossible to have zero legal financial hierarchies at all, even if relationally you can.
Right. Yeah. What are your opinions? Who wants to go first on hierarchy? Since we're at the topic.
Or I'm just thinking about this question particularly because we're here talking to you in this context of Throuples and how much the society we're in, like, kind of puts constraints around this. So you might, I think it's really normal to, like, within your relationship, talk about hierarchies, within your relationship, talk about like how committed to one another are we? What is our level of commitment? But then the world is going to project couple dynamics onto you no matter what. And I think that's where this piece around like marriage or public commitment comes up. It's like, how do we want to interface with how the world sees us? And there's parts that are going to be beyond our control. And then there's like, how do we want to influence that? Is that important? Is that not? That might not be talked about, especially earlier on, or even considered, because you're just considering how you want to be in a relationship with these people.
Correct.
I think I don't have a personal answer around it because I'm not in any relationship that I'm thinking about marriage or commitment. So I'm like, it could all change at different times. But right now, that's not feeling relevant.
Open hand.
Yeah, Kristen, do you want to add anything or?
I think it's just really important for us to validate people's realities. I think it doesn't really serve a couple that's been married for 12 years and has a couple of kids and a mortgage together to say, well, now that you're moving into this, you can't prioritize your wife. You can't prioritize your children's soccer games. The fact that you're only actually available 2 nights out of a month is an actual reality. And there are very good reasons. So the way Ayala and I are sort of working through this, what we suggest people do is to get really clear about your common values. And it's an exercise that you should revisit multiple times in your life. What are my values? What are my values right now? And then looking at what your priorities are. I think it's important to say, like, look, I got 2 school-age children. They're my priority. Making sure that I take care of what my wife and I have built. This is really important for us. And be able to have you can imagine how vulnerable somebody coming into that situation might be. And to say, well, listen, we're in a hierarchical relationship. My wife always, or my husband, like, is the gatekeeper, if they're like if someone who's experienced in non-monogamy gets a couple that comes at them and says things like that, that's important information. And then you can say, I just don't play that way, or okay, well, this is what I would need in order to be open and interested in maybe dating you. And I think some things that I found is that people get real nervous around these things. And even if they've had conversations, then they start doing sort of like sneaky little things, just sort of like, well, she was in the neighborhood, so I just decided to drop by. And they're like, okay, well, we had a conversation about not introducing the kids to our dates, right? Until we've actually had that conversation. So then that's a really good jumping off point. Okay, we had an agreement and you broke it. Why did you do that? And not in a shaming way, but there's probably a lot of shame that was under there. And then there's a great place to pause and just say, okay, we probably should do some work around this. So really being able to talk about your priorities and then have agreements. You should be able to say, this is the amount I'm available for. This is what I don't currently feel available for. And here are the reasons why. Instead of just like, click, like, meet up, have a great fun time. Then all of a sudden you're having harder conversations. So I think it's really sexy when you come with some ability to talk about some of these things.
Yes,
right up front, turn on
the work.
I do feel like this game, and I'm speaking for me personally, it would force me. So I've always had a hard time with boundaries, and only now I'm learning how to assert my boundaries. And I think this game is forcing me to do that in a good way, forcing me in a good way, making me like be honest about it and like talk about it and decide on it and stick with it.
Yeah, I think it shows where your weak spots maybe are in your boundaries.
Good point. Yeah. Well, what I like about it is even if you're a couple and you're looking to want to be in a throuple, you're going to have to venture out into that polyamory world and start dating and everything. And a lot of this questions address that, because you don't just go straight into a closed throuple.
Right. Yeah. You don't start out non-hierarchical.
There's going to be dating. There's going to be things that come up, and that's a stressful time and everything. But eventually, most throuples seem to gravitate towards, once they find their person or whatever, like, oh, we'll be kind of closed, or they get, whatever their
probably because of polysaturation. It seems to be such a normal next step.
Yeah. Or if they're not closed, they don't tell everybody. They keep it very secret that they're dating. It's not. Yeah. They don't commonly talk about it. But I know for me, just intuitively, right from the beginning, I always wanted total equality. But it's really hard. Like even years later, it's like it's taken us years to get to a point where we're all sharing finances, because it's really hard to work around the system, or to all, And it was important. Like even when I bought vehicles, they had to all have captain's chairs, so we all got to sit in a captain's chair, and no one ever feels like they're in the back seat. And I had to buy a house that had 2 master bedrooms that are identical, so no one got a bigger room or everything. It was like, how can we? I probably went overboard, but I was like, everything has to be equal for everybody. The ruler. No one's cheated.
And it's such a beautiful value, but it's tough in reality. It's tough to figure out what equal even means and feels like. And something I'm always talking about with people is like fair might not always be equal, because everyone has different needs and desires. And so if have 2 partners and one has this really big desire and need, and another one just like, that's not important to me, meeting that need for both people isn't necessarily the way for it to be fair. It might be like, okay, but I'm going to equally consider both of your needs.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's definitely not about equality. It's about fairness. Yeah.
Great point.
And the last card, if relevant, what happens if there is a pregnancy? I thought that was
You really liked that card.
I do, because I remember when you and I got together and we were talking about our relationship.
Yeah, you kept saying, put a baby in me.
I'm going to ignore that and be professional. You did mention that if I want a baby, you would have a baby with me. And I don't want a baby, and I never did, but I thought that was the most considerate thing ever. I really appreciated that. I was like, I felt, even if I never wanted it, like just having the option there, it made me feel equal. It made me feel the same as Char. And I like that. And I know a lot of our throuples have had babies after they became a throuple.
Some very quickly. Too.
Yeah. So
2 of the Throuples we interviewed on this show have had babies in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Throuple Talk babies.
Throuple
Yeah.
Talk babies. Throuple Talk family is growing.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
we
did.
love bringing this one in. And I think it's really edgy for some people. This is one of the questions that some people get like, ooh, I don't want to be talking about this. But for that reason, like, what? Talking about it all right out of the gate, even if the answer can change.
In my experience, the ones that do make you go like, huh? Those are the ones you need to be talking about.
Yep.
Exactly. Yes, there are, sex, money, kids. These are the things that can really stress any relationship, regardless of the dynamic. And so just have the conversation. It's not necessarily set in stone. Our agreement right now is no, or our agreement right now is maybe, or, and we've even got a question in there like, what if your metamors decide? What if there was a no baby agreement and then a couple people decide on their own, like, we would like to have a baby? So even just having these theoretical conversations breeds intimacy, trust, and vulnerability between people. And so even if it's hard, that's why it's on the little card. You don't have to take responsibility. You can just say, well, the game said that we should talk about it, so we will. I wanted to come back really quickly, if I could, to this idea of boundaries, because I think a lot of us were raised, and our understanding emotionally, viscerally, and physically with a boundary is that it was punishment. Go to your room. I'm not talking to you right now, right? Like, or I'm not doing this anymore. And it's stonewalling, and it feels like a lot of shame. And so realistically, I mean, I think that my story is that that's why a lot of people are anti-boundary, is because they were sort of traumatized with being punished through boundaries, and they don't really understand what a boundary is. And a boundary is love. When we have a conversation about how we're interrelating, I'm showing you that I care and that I want this relationship to be healthy. So I'm not going to withhold my need here or my discomfort here and say, I don't think this is okay with me, or I need something differently. That actually is a big shift that we want people to sort of invite this idea. And I think that's why we tend to use more this idea, the term living agreement, because the word boundary can really trip people up. But that's really what it is. If I say to you, I really need the sheets clean, or I need to have some aftercare of like 48 hours, and I need you to not be texting them while we're together, and da 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 da, and you respect that, I feel safer here.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
No,
Thank
I like
you
that a lot.
for bringing that up.
I know that's something we have. It's like you say, I need this thing. It's usually not that big of a thing. And then I say, okay. And then a week later, and I need this thing. And then all of a sudden our lives improved very greatly off these little things.
Yep. No,
Little
that's
agreements.
True. That's true.
I am curious to know if there's any feedback that you guys have received from people who have interacted with this game that just really stands out, that resonated deeply, that you're like, oh, all of the hours of developing this, like, for this, that was worth it.
It's that we sell the game mostly in really rural towns across the South and the Midwest.
Oh, interesting.
So the majority of our customers are from little tiny towns in West Virginia, Texas, Minnesota.
What does that mean?
Missouri, Idaho. Well, Isla, we have a theory. Why don't you share what our theory is?
Yeah, we thought it was going to be coastal cities. We're from the Bay Area. And we realized around the Bay, it's so easy to have so much non-monogamous community. If I'm confused about something, I can go
an open conversation about it. Yeah.
And
where are you guys
live in
at
one of these
now?
places, I just moved away from Berkeley. I'm now in Grass Valley, California.
Ah, that's where.
And Kristen.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Sacramento.
Roseville.
Cool.
And I'm in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Oh, nice. All right, rich people.
Now that we have established that.
She's done.
Listen. I was a teacher for over 30 years. I was a public school teacher for over 30 years. So, no. Yeah.
But I think it's like we need community around these things to have these conversations. And if you're somewhere where that's not accessible, you want more tools and connection around how to have these conversations if you're not hearing other people's lived experiences all the time.
Yeah, nice. I think we moved here to Houston a couple of years ago, and I thought, this is the Bible Belt and everything. Coming from Roseville, I think we were way more shunned in Roseville or Northern California than we were out here. Nobody cares.
There's a lot more judgment.
Like, whatever.
That's
so interesting.
Yeah.
I think I would have had that same first assumption too.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
The non-monogamous community out here is much bigger.
Yeah.
And
we're kind of close to Austin. I think Austin is like probably the capital of the United States of
we have a lot of customers in Texas, all over Texas, but big shout outs. We've had several from Dallas and Austin, Houston.
Nice.
I think one of the things that I've enjoyed the most is I had this assumption that this was something people were either going to use for self-reflection or use to play with partners. And a use that surprised me that I didn't find out till it was out there was people playing this game at meetups. There's these people that host these non-monogamy meetups around California, and they've been bringing the games, and as a way to connect with other people that you're not in relationship with, because people want to know, how are you dealing with that? Which is, I mean, why people love podcasts like this. We want to know, like, how are you making it work? And so it's been really cool to feel that use and to like get to go to some of these events and just sometimes set it up, and then I'll stand back and I'll watch people playing it and just the juicy conversations that are coming out with strangers. And so that's been a fun surprise element that I just love.
That's so cool. I love the concept of that, because I think in my experience, I went from very conservative, Christian upbringing, and then you let go of that and you move into non-monogamy, and it feels there is a part of you during that transition period that feels like, well, I left that behind, so now I have to go to the opposite. And the thing I love about that concept of doing it in community is you see like there's so much space. Like you don't just leave everything behind, and you don't have to accept the opposite as being true for you. It's like it's the build your own, like what actually works for you, what's fulfilling for you.
Yeah, correct. Even like we kind of took a little hiatus for a while. We had to, when our careers changed and everything, we weren't able to make as many podcasts as we used to. But the whole time, we always tried to keep up with all the emails. So we get emails all the time from people like, I'm having this problem. We try to respond to all of them if we can. And but the reoccurring theme always was a new throuple, new, and they got that NRE and everything's going great, and they don't need to do anything or listen to anything, read any books, and then it falls apart. And then they're like, what do I do now? In the aftermath of it. And I feel like this game is so accessible. It's like, you don't all have to read the book. Just pull this thing out. It's a quick sheet to let's do the work really quickly, get these questions out of the way and fix this problem, because it's so hard to find your person. And if you can salvage it before it falls apart, because some of these things, like especially the finances, preventive medicine. If we could solve it, especially the big ones, like the recurring is definitely financial and jealousy.
Yeah.
So let's nip it in the bud in the beginning.
The commitment.
Yeah. You get through this, and you might salvage before the destruction.
So
happens.
thank you for creating this game.
Yeah, it's very useful.
We really
tool.
enjoy it. I'm going to show it again.
Throuple Talk
endorses. Before you mess up your throuple.
There's even 3 people on it.
Play this so you can actually have a chance, because trust me, you need it. Even though you think, actually, if you think you don't need it, you need it more than that.
Well, thank you so much. The feedback from you guys means so much.
Right.
And honestly, that's been a big part of my favorite part, is just hearing people really having good experiences.
Well, thank you for creating it.
Thank you for creating it, and thank you for your time on the show. Is there anything that you want to add that we did not ask? Or we're going to share how people can buy the game, and we're going to share your links to your websites in the show notes. Is there anything you want to add?
No, just welcome everybody to the community. We're just so excited to hear from you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It feels like a really rich conversation. Appreciated speaking to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoy our show, please share and subscribe, and join our Facebook group, Throuple Talks Connection Hub.
And please leave a comment and tell us what resonated with you, and let us know if you end up trying out this game. Let us know what you think.
And we'll see you next time.